Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our presentation today, which is a guide to pre-med admissions. Now, before we get started with the main content of the presentation today, I just want to tell you a little bit more about AcceptU and what we do. We are a completely virtual college admissions counseling group. So we work with students throughout the country and around the world, meeting with the students and parents one-on-one via phone calls or video calls to really walk them through the entire college admissions process. So we start working with students as early as around ninth grade, and we help with building a profile, selecting courses, selecting summer programs, and then as students get to be juniors and seniors, we're working with them on the main pieces of the college application. So determining where they're going to apply, when they're going to apply, putting together their essays and their application, helping them prepare for interviews, and then of course making that final decision of where they're going to attend. Our team of counselors, and I'll show you in a second some of our counselors and where they come from, but we have all worked previously in college admissions offices at some of the top universities across the country. And in total, we have about 250 years of combined experience working on the other side of the desk. So we really know the ins and outs of the college admissions process, and we use that insight to be able to guide our students. Because of that knowledge, our students are very successful. More than 90% of our clients have been accepted to one of their top 3 choices. And I'll also show you in a few slides some of our results that we've had from this past year, because we're really excited about the various universities where our students have been accepted. So here's a slide just showing you some of our counselors. And as you can see, our backgrounds really span the country in terms of the types of institutions where we've previously worked. So you have Ivy League schools, you have some of the top public universities in the country, you have some of the top liberal arts universities, as well as top private institutions. So we tend to try to match students with a counselor who is going to have an experience that's most relevant to what their interest is and the types of schools that they're going to be applying to. This is the sampling of some of our results from this past year. So we worked with students from close to 230 different high schools from 29 different states in the US, but also 22 different countries. So this was our largest and most diverse class that we had ever worked with. And in total, we had our students who were accepted to 249 different colleges and universities. So you can see the sampling list over on the right-hand side there. Pretty much, you name it, we had a student accepted into that school. And you can see, again, all different types of universities. We work with students who are applying to public schools and private schools, international universities, art and design colleges, liberal arts colleges, technical institutions. So again, really work with students who have a variety of interests and a variety of goals in the college admissions process. Just to tell you a little bit more about my background before we jump into the main content of our presentation, I'm an assistant director of college counseling at AcceptU. My name is Kyle Courtley. I got my bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt University and then subsequently received a certificate in college advising from Columbia University. My admissions experience has been on both the public and the private side. I worked for 4 years as an assistant director of admissions at Rice University, and then also spent a few years with the State University of New York system at SUNY Buffalo. While I was at Rice, I also oversaw the Rice Baylor Medical Scholars Program, which is a BSMD combined degree program. And so it's really that experience that I'm going to be leveraging to talk to you today about pre-med admissions and what does that mean and the different types of pre-med programs and what might be most suited to you and to your interests. So just a quick agenda of what we are going to cover today. I'm first going to start off with what is pre-med. Hopefully most of you who are listening already know what pre-med is, but just to be clear, I want to go through a definition really quickly. Then we'll talk about different types of pre-med programs. What are the different options and paths that are available to students? Following that, we'll talk about curriculum requirements. So not only what are the courses that you will need to take once you get to college, but also what are the courses that you should be aiming to take in high school in order to be prepared to enter whichever pre-med program you decide to choose. We'll also go through the pre-med review process. So what is an admissions counselor going to be looking for when they see a student who's interested in pre-med? And then how can you strengthen your application to be able to really stand out to an admissions officer who is reviewing you for a pre-med program? Then we'll just kind of summarize with some final words of advice, and I will leave our contact information up at the end for any questions that you may have. So we'll start off with what is pre-med. So pre-med, first and foremost, is not a major. And this is sometimes a misconception that students have. I'll talk to students, I'll talk to families, and I'll say, what are you interested in majoring in college? And they'll say pre-med. And then I have to tell them that that's not really an option. Pre-med is more of an advising program, or it's a set of courses that are designed to prepare a student to be able to enter medical school. So you may hear it referred to as a track at certain universities, but again, you cannot get a bachelor's degree in pre-med, right? So you'll have to choose something else in conjunction with doing this pre-med path. We'll talk a little bit later on in the presentation about what majors you can choose, what majors you should choose, what are the benefits and disadvantages to choosing one major versus another. So we'll dive a lot deeper into that subject, but just know that pre-med in and of itself is not a major. Now, you may find some universities that offer pre-med as a minor. A lot of times you'll see this at liberal arts colleges. And so again, this is really just going to be the same thing, right? It's still the same track of courses that you're taking, but it's just that they're going to package it as a minor as opposed to packaging it as just an advising program or saying, you know, hey, you just need to take these classes, right? They sort of have put it together into a more formal program and called a minor. Doesn't really make a difference either way. You don't need to do a minor in pre-med in order to be more competitive for medical school. Everybody's going to be taking the same classes for the most part. And again, a little bit later on in this presentation, I'll talk about what those classes are that students need to take, right? What are the minimum requirements? And then what are some other courses that you should maybe look to add during your time in your undergraduate years? Pre-med can also encompass a variety of different career paths. So just because pre-med, you would think pre-medicine, right? So you're looking to go on to medical school and becoming a physician. It could also cover dentistry, pharmacy, veterinary school. Pre-med is kind of an umbrella term. And actually at a lot of universities, you're not gonna see it called pre-med, you're gonna see it called pre-health advising or pre-health professions advising. And that's because again, it's sort of encompassing a variety of different health careers. Now, once you get to your university and you're within a pre-health advising program, if you are interested in going to veterinary school versus going to medical school, you may be advised slightly differently, but just know that you may hear that term and it kind of covers all of these different fields, but then the program will be more individualized once you actually get to that university and start working with an advisor. So I want to talk through three major types of pre-med programs and what are the differences between them and which one may potentially be the best fit for you and for your interests. So again, three different programs that I'll be talking about. The first is going to be pre-professional advising. The second is going to be BSMD or BAMD or BSDO or BADO, combined degree programs or accelerated medical programs. You may sometimes see them called. And then the third is going to be early assurance programs. So we'll start off with pre-professional advising. And I just want to emphasize right away, this is the most common path that students will take to get to medical school. I am not giving a fully accurate statistic here, but I would guess that probably 95 to 98% of all students going on to medical school are doing so via this pre-professional advising path. It's definitely over 90%. So again, this is the most typical. This is what the vast majority of students are going to be doing. And so this is kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about the definition of pre-med, right? So pre-professional advising means that you are working with somebody at the university that you are attending who is helping you to be able to prepare you to go through the medical school or whichever professional healthcare field, graduate school you may want to enter, help you go through that admissions process. So in some ways, very similar to the work that we do at AcceptU with students who are in high school and looking to go into undergraduate programs. A pre-professional advising program is giving advice, helping you build a profile, giving you insights into the admissions process into medical school while you are an undergraduate. Now, this person who you're working with is different from your major advisor, because again, pre-med is not a major. So you will have somebody at the university who is helping you to be able to make sure that you are fulfilling all of your requirements to get your bachelor's degree. So whether you're majoring in biology or history or psychology, you'll have an advisor who you're working with who is going to ensure that you're getting all the classes that you need, to ensure that you're fulfilling all of your extra requirements, right, to make sure that you're on track to graduate within 4 years. Then your pre-professional advisor is going to make sure that while you're doing all of that work to get your bachelor's degree, you're also fitting in the courses that you need to be able to apply to medical school or dental school or veterinary school, right? Whatever the path may be that you're looking to take. And you'll see it kind of separated by interest at this point, right? So a pre-med advisor is going to be different than a pre-dental advisor, is going to be different than a pre-vet advisor. Again, every university does things a little bit differently, but typically you'll see it broken down based upon your area of interest. So not only are these pre-professional advisors helping you make sure that you get all of the courses that you need, but a lot of times they're offering extra support in the form of extracurricular activities, helping you find research opportunities or shadowing opportunities. There may also be MCAT preparation or interview preparation that is offered as part of a pre-professional advising program. So it can be really robust, right? Again, can vary from university to university, but a lot of times a pre-health advising office is going to have a lot of functions. It's not going to strictly be coursework, but it's again going to be making sure that your entire profile is competitive to apply to medical school. Now, the nice thing about pre-professional advising is that you can request a pre-professional advisor and you can start working with a pre-health advising office at any time during your undergraduate career. Now, at many universities on the actual application for admission, they're going to ask whether you're interested in pre-med or pre-health advising. And if you check yes on the application and you ultimately enroll at that university, you'll likely automatically be given a pre-health advisor. But let's say you didn't check that box, or you don't figure out until your sophomore year of college that a health profession is something that you want to enter. That's fine. You can go to this office at any time and talk to them, meet with a pre-health advisor, right, and get yourself on the path to being able to go on to medical school. Now, of course, if you start working with a pre-health advising office 2 weeks before you graduate, probably not going to be able to help you very much, but they're likely not going to say no, right? They'll still have a meeting with you. They'll still help you with any questions that you have. So again, this is just a resource that is available on campus for students at any time throughout their 4 years. And it's a support system that is in place to make sure that you are doing everything that you need to do in order to be able to take the MCAT, to apply to medical school, to do those interviews, to hopefully get into one or a few medical schools, and then ultimately to choose which one you are going to attend. Again, the most common path that students are going to take. Now, the least common path that students are going to take is a BSMD combined degree program. And again, you may see BSMD, you may see BAMD. I'll also talk about BSMD BSDO programs, which are very similar. It's just a different graduate degree. But the main thing that I want to emphasize about BSMD combined degree programs is how extremely highly selective these programs are. I would say that the vast majority of BSMD programs have about a 1 to 5% acceptance rate. So we are talking about more competitive than the most competitive universities in the country, or a similar competitiveness to the most competitive universities in the country. There is no easy BSMD program. There is no BSMD program with a higher likelihood of acceptance. These are all extremely competitive programs and are only offered to the very, very top students in the country. So again, most students, I would again argue 95 to 98% of students will not be accepted to a BSMD program. They will not be going through a BSMD program in order to get to medical school. It is a very, very small number of students. Now, what is a BSMD program? For those who may not be familiar, essentially, this is where you're actually applying to medical school at the same time that you're applying to your undergraduate program. And if you are accepted, you're basically offered conditional acceptance to medical school at the same time that you are offered admission into your undergraduate program. So in the case of the Rice-Baylor Medical Scholars Program, students would, of course, have to first be admitted to Rice, but then assuming that they were offered admission to Rice, and then if they were to be accepted into the Rice-Baylor program, they would also be given conditional acceptance into Baylor College of Medicine. You heard that word conditional, right? So this is not guaranteed. You still need to maintain a rather stringent set of credentials throughout your undergraduate years in order to keep that spot within the medical school. So oftentimes it's achieving a GPA of at least a 3.0 or a 3.5. It could be no grade lower than a C in any of your science or STEM related courses throughout your undergraduate years. You may actually still have to take the MCAT, and you may need to attain a certain score on the MCAT in order to maintain your spot within the program. So again, not only is it so extremely competitive to be accepted into these programs, it's also very hard to stay in these programs. So not for the faint-hearted, right? I would say that BSMD programs also are really only for students who have known for a very, very long time that they want to go into the medical field. If you are somebody who's still a little bit iffy, if there's a tiny voice in the back of your head that says, I'm not 100% sure that I want to become a doctor, or if this was a very recent discovery for you, if it's something that you're still just exploring right now, BSMD combined degree program is likely not going to be the right fit for you. Now, these programs can vary in length, anywhere from 6 years to 8 years. 8 years is obviously going to be the traditional path. You're doing 4 years of undergraduate work, and then you're doing 4 years of medical school. For a 6 and a 7 year program, the amount of time that you're spending in medical school does not change. So it is always going to be 4 years of medical school. But what it is doing is reducing the amount of time that you are spending on your undergraduate work. So 6 year program, you can do the math, 2 years undergrad, 4 years medical school, 7 year program, 3 years undergrad, 4 years medical school. That means that 6 and 7 year programs are going to be very rigorous for the undergraduate portion. And you're really not going to have time to do pretty much anything else other than to be taking your courses, to potentially be doing research, shadowing, right? But 100% of your time, for the most part, is going to be dedicated towards just meeting those academic requirements, again, in a 6 or 7 year program. So a lot of times for the students that I work with, I recommend that they only consider 8 year programs. I think that college should be a time when you are able to do other things, right? If you want to do a study abroad, if you want to play a sport, if you want to join clubs and organizations, right? Extracurricular activities, and many of those things are not going to be possible in a 6 or a 7 year program. So it's a very rare student who I would recommend for a 6 or 7 year program. For the most part, if you are even going to consider these, which again, most students are not going to be competitive for these programs, but for those who are, I would recommend considering the 8 year programs. Now, I mentioned BSDO programs. They are going to be very similar to BSMD programs. Again, same layout where you're offered conditional acceptance into medical school at the same time that you're offered admission into an undergraduate program. It's just that the medical school is going to be a DO program, which is an osteopathic medical doctor, as opposed to an MD program. You can read about the differences between those two online. DO, I think historically has had a reputation of being slightly easier to get into than an MD program. That is no longer the case. Certainly with these programs, a BSDO program is going to be just as competitive for acceptance as a BSMD program. So it's really more about which graduate degree you want to pursue, right? What type of medicine you're looking to practice. And that would drive whether you're looking at a BSMD program or a BSDO program. So again, you can look up the differences and figure out which one might be the best fit for you. There are definitely a smaller number of BSDO programs than there are BSMD programs, but there's actually a very small number of both. There's only about 50 to 60 BSMD combined degree programs in the country. And actually a lot of programs and a lot of schools are moving away from offering these BSMD programs. So there's universities that previously used to have them. Northwestern is a good example, Washington University in St. Louis, that have since gotten rid of these combined degree programs. So the number is getting smaller and smaller each year, which again means that the competitiveness is just getting higher and higher as you go through these programs. The third and final option that I just want to briefly discuss is what's called an early assurance program. And now an early assurance program is not something that you need to worry about as a high school student. It's not something that you're applying into as a high schooler. So really when I'm working with students, I'm not helping them with an early assurance process, but I just like to make them aware of this as another option that may be available to them. And basically what an early assurance program is it's when students are already in college. If they are doing very, very well in their courses in their freshman and sophomore year, they may be eligible to apply to medical school earlier and therefore gain acceptance to medical school earlier. So again, depending on the school, depending on the program, students are going to be applying to medical school in either their sophomore or their junior year, as opposed to waiting until their senior year, which would be the traditional timing. These are, again, very competitive programs, as you would imagine. In order to be able to get early acceptance into a medical school, you really need to prove that you are ready for that program. So you have to complete certain classes in your first 2 years of college. You really need to step it up in terms of the amount of STEM courses that you're taking during your first 2 years. You also have to maintain a very, very high GPA during your first 2 years. It's typically going to be at least a 3.5, if not higher than that, to even be considered for an early assurance program. Early assurance programs can operate in two different ways. There's some that are going to be within the university. So I'm just giving a hypothetical example here, but let's say that Johns Hopkins offered an early assurance program. They do not, but I'm just using them as an example. It could be a program where only Johns Hopkins students could apply to Johns Hopkins Medical School early, right? So that would be one path of an early assurance program. Another path would be certain medical schools that are open to students from any college applying to them. So again, I'm just going to hypothetically use Johns Hopkins as my example. Let's say Johns Hopkins Medical School was part of an early assurance program. They may allow a student from any university to just try to apply to Johns Hopkins Medical School earlier. So it depends on the school, depends on the program. Some are going to be internal with the university. Some are just going to be the medical school saying, hey, anybody at any school, if you're doing well, you can go ahead and apply a little bit earlier, try to gain acceptance into our program. Again, this is not something that you apply to as a high school student. It is not something that you are indicating an interest in on your application, but it is an option that you could potentially pursue once you get to college. If you were looking for a little bit more of that accelerated program, but maybe you're not competitive for a BSMD program, or you're not able to gain acceptance into a BSMD program, this is another option in terms of getting early acceptance. Again, not having to wait the 4 years to apply to medical school. So I want to go through the curriculum requirements. We're going to start off with what courses are actually going to be required of you once you get into college in order to apply to medical school. And the Association of American Medical Colleges has set forth very minimum standards that all students must complete. So every single student who wants to apply to a medical university in the US needs to have at least 1 year of biology, 1 year of physics, 1 year of English, and 2 years of chemistry, at least through organic chemistry. Again, these are the minimum requirements. Each medical school and each undergraduate university is going to have its own set of requirements, and it's going to be more robust than these minimum requirements. But just so that you're aware, these are the basic set. And then of course, again, every university is going to have additional requirements on top of that. Most of the time it's going to be more advanced science work, right? So courses like anatomy and physiology, maybe higher level biology classes, could be a psychology or a sociology course, right? They may add in other requirements there. As part of the medical school admissions process, there is also the requirement to take the MCAT and to achieve a certain score depending on the university that you're looking to attend, and to do interviews. And this is happening typically end of junior year, beginning of senior year. So similar timing to the undergraduate admissions process, medical school admissions process is going to be happening mostly in your senior year of college. So you have a lot of time to be able to build up towards these requirements, to be able to study for the MCAT. And again, if you're working with a pre-health professions advising office within your university, they're likely going to provide some resources for preparing for these components of the application process as well. So now when we think about majors, right, I mentioned at the beginning, again, pre-med is not a major. If there's nothing else you come away from this presentation learning, remember that pre-med is not a major. So you will have to choose another major to pursue during your undergraduate years. And according to the Association of American Medical Colleges, the most common choice for students who ultimately go on to medical school is biology. Greater than 50% of all applicants to medical school pursued biology as their undergraduate major. This makes sense, right? For students who are interested in medicine, a lot of times biology is the subject that they like in high school. It has the most overlap with the medical profession. So it's sort of a given that biology would be the most common. After biology, actually the second most popular choice are going to be majors within the social sciences. So majors like psychology, sociology, those are really emerging in terms of popularity. After that, you're going to have the physical sciences, so chemistry, physics, right? Looking at other sciences beyond biology. Below that, you'll have humanities, so majors like English or history or classics or philosophy. There are students who choose to take those paths and then ultimately enter medical school. And then the least common for students applying to medical school is going to be math and statistics. So you kind of think your more engineering focused students are not necessarily looking to go on to medical school. They're looking to do their graduate work in other fields. Now, I want to discuss some of the pros and cons of choosing biology as your undergraduate major, because again, it is the most popular. So I know that for the students that I work with, I think a lot of them think that that's what they have to do, right? And I always like to make clear what the benefits are, but also what the disadvantages are of making that choice. So of course, the benefit to choosing biology is that it's going to be the most relevant and it's going to have the most overlap with those required courses that you need to take in order to be competitive for medical school. So if you're choosing biology as your undergraduate major, by taking the courses that you need to get your bachelor's degree, you're likely already going to be fulfilling a lot of those requirements that you need in order to apply to medical school. Versus if you chose, let's say, English as your primary major, you're going to have all of those English classes that you're taking, but then you're also going to have to be taking biology classes, anatomy and physiology, organic chemistry, right? So you're adding sort of extra work on top of the courses that you need for your major. Certainly not impossible to do that. Most universities are going to have sort of flexible requirements, and you're obviously going to be able to take classes outside of your major, but you may need to be more thoughtful about what those classes are if you're choosing something other than biology to make sure that you're meeting all of those minimum requirements. So that's the big advantage to choosing biology is, again, more overlap with the pre-med curriculum. It does potentially then open up space for you to be able to do, let's say, a double major or a minor, right? Because again, if you're already naturally fulfilling those pre-med requirements with the courses for your major, those other courses that you have space for, you could take them in other areas. Now, the biggest disadvantage to choosing biology as your major is that it's the most common choice for students. So if more than 50% of every student applying to medical school in a given year was a biology major, if you're in that group, you need to stand out in another way, right? Because your choice of major is not going to be helping you stand out. In fact, it's going to make you very much like every other student who's applying to medical school, versus students who maybe chose philosophy as their major, right? Or English as their major. They're going to stand out. There's not going to be many of them in the applicant pool. And so assuming that they're also strong in the sciences, they may have an advantage in the admissions process. Now, the thing that I want to stress though for students, and what I stress to my clients as well, is that you can't make yourself into somebody that you're not, right? So if you love biology and you are a member of the biology Olympiad team and you are taking AP biology and you've done biological research, don't choose philosophy as your major because it's not the right fit for you, right? You clearly are more focused in biology. But I like to bring up this point for those students who maybe have other interests, right? If you are a student who is on the debate team and does Model UN, right? Maybe you would be interested in political science as your major as opposed to biology, but you ultimately want to become a doctor, right? That's fine. So I make this point just to say that if you have other interests, don't be afraid to explore them, but don't make yourself into somebody that you're not, right? Again, don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole, so to speak, because you are not going to be a strong applicant if you have a profile that screams biology, but you're not applying to biology, right? It's going to be a red flag for undergraduate admissions officers. It would ultimately be a red flag for medical school admissions officers. So stay true to yourself, but stay true to yourself with the knowledge that if you have interests outside of biology, you can certainly make that work for you. Speaking of the review process for pre-med students, let's talk about what admissions officers are going to be looking for. So again, we're speaking here about an undergraduate university and what they would be looking for in a high school student. First of all, most universities utilize what's called a holistic review process, which basically means that grades and test scores are just one piece of the admissions process, but they're looking at your essays, they're looking at your extracurricular activities, they're looking at your letters of recommendation, right? It's a whole puzzle, and each piece of the application is sort of one piece of that puzzle to form the whole picture of who you are as an applicant, which means that everything matters, right? The courses that you choose matter, your grades matter, your essays matter, your extracurriculars matter, right? Because again, they're all reviewed and in some ways are reviewed equally as part of the admissions process. I will say that always the number one factor that admissions officers are looking at are going to be the courses that you chose to take in high school and the grades that you received in those courses, right? If you're not able to show that you can succeed in a high school class that is potentially very relevant to what you want to study, it's going to make a university think that you can't succeed at their school either, right? So that's always going to be the number one factor. So what courses do you want to look to take during high school if you're interested in going into a healthcare field? Of course, you want to take the sciences. So you should be taking biology, chemistry, and physics at some point throughout high school. And you'll probably be taking one or more of those again at a higher level, right? So maybe let's say 9th grade, you take biology, 10th grade, you take chemistry, 11th grade, you take physics, and then maybe 12th grade, you take AP biology, right? You may push even higher than that, but that's just an example of a course that students could follow throughout high school. In terms of math, you want to get to at least a calculus level. Doesn't necessarily have to be AP Calc BC if math isn't your subject, but you definitely need to get at least to calculus. You can't end on pre-calc. And I have a lot of students oftentimes in their senior year who are debating between taking statistics or calculus. If you're interested in a STEM field, you really should be choosing calculus. AP Stat should be in addition to a calculus class, not in place of a calculus class. And I will say that many students are going above and beyond. They're getting to multivariable calculus, linear algebra, differential equations by the time that they're in their senior year of high school. I would also say don't discount your foreign language, right? A lot of times students get to that minimum requirement of 2 years or 3 years of a foreign language, and then they say, yep, I'm done. I don't really enjoy this. But students who take all 4 years of high school of a foreign language are going to stand out, because not every student does that. And certainly with the increasing diversity within the world and increasing diversity in terms of the patients who doctors are treating, being able to show fluency or even semi-fluency in a foreign language can really set you apart from other students. Now, the next set of courses that I've listed down here are elective courses. And so these are courses that not every high school is going to offer. These are not an expectation of admissions officers, but I wanted to present them in case you go to a school that does have some of these courses, to say that taking these classes would certainly add to your application. So if you have an opportunity to take organic chemistry or anatomy and physiology or AP psychology, right? These are all courses that are very relevant to the medical field. If we think back to that slide that I showed of the minimum requirements when you're in college in order to get into medical school, right? Have to take chemistry through organic chemistry. So if you've already had some experience with it in high school, may make that course a little bit easier in college. So again, not courses that are required. I understand that these are not courses that are offered everywhere, but certainly if you have an opportunity to take them. These are also great things to think about if you're thinking about what to do over the summer, or if you have an opportunity to take a class at a community college, right? Look to see if maybe you could take some of these classes. So even if your high school doesn't offer them, maybe there's another way that you could add these to your profile. And then standardized testing. I know standardized testing is not super relevant anymore. And actually I'm noticing here that we put SAT subject tests in math and science, and SAT subject tests are no longer offered as part of the admissions process. The reason why I wanted to leave this on here though, is because if you have taken an SAT subject test, if you were perhaps listening and you were a junior or senior, and maybe you took one early on in high school, you can certainly still send those to universities, but they are being phased out. And if you are a younger student who has not taken these, or perhaps not even heard of them, that's fine. They are no longer a piece of the admissions process. But certainly I do encourage students to still think about taking the SAT or the ACT, right? Even though universities now are becoming more test optional or test flexible, what I have found is that students who do have strong scores on the SAT or the ACT are still doing well in the admissions process. Certainly if you are thinking about applying to one of those combined degree programs, right, a BSMD or BSDO program, many times those are still going to require standardized testing, even if the undergraduate university does not. So I think that for students who are interested in STEM, students who are interested in medicine, it's a good idea to still take an SAT or ACT to still try to get a competitive score. But it's nice to have the knowledge that there is a little bit more flexibility. And so if perhaps you're not a good tester, or you don't get the test scores that you believe that you would need in order to get into a competitive program, you may have more options than you would have previously. You'll also be sending schools either AP exam scores or IB exam scores. So again, it'll depend on what type of curriculum you're in and what your high school offers. Certainly if you've taken AP tests in the sciences and math, but even in other subjects, if you're getting 3s and 4s and 5s, you're gonna wanna put those on the application. And then IB exams, of course, you'll be taking those at the end of the year. 6s and 7s, you may actually get some credit for, even potentially 5, 6, and 7. You may get some advanced credit for, to be able to perhaps bypass a course during your undergraduate years. So again, standardized testing becoming less relevant than perhaps it was previously, but still something that students should be planning for and should be prepared for, with the little bit of the cushion that there is a little bit more flexibility nowadays. Now, in terms of building your profile for extracurricular activities, what are admissions counselors looking for when they're looking at students who indicate an interest in pre-med? They really like to see hands-on volunteering. They like to see research experience, but they also like to see well-rounded activities, right? Students who have solely dedicated their extracurriculars just towards medicine, right? They're volunteering at a hospital, they're doing medical research, they're shadowing a doctor, that's great, but you're not going to stand out, right? You're not going to be perhaps as interesting of an application to read as a student who has done all of that, but also is president of the debate club, or also plays a sport, or also plays an instrument, or also does dance, right? Whatever it may be. So if you do have other interests, certainly continue to explore those. It's great to be a well-rounded candidate. They also, of course, are looking for students who exhibit leadership, but also who show that they're able to work as part of a team. And both of these don't need to be in the most literal traditional sense. So leadership can be shown through mentoring, through tutoring younger students, through starting a club at your high school, right? Teamwork can be shown through group projects, through summer programs, through volunteering at a research lab, right? You don't need to play a sport in order to show teamwork. You don't need to be president of a club in order to show leadership, but they are qualities that admissions officers are going to be looking for. So how can you strengthen your application? What should you be looking to do now to add to your profile in order to be more competitive? So we talked about getting some hands-on volunteering experience. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is that volunteering at a hospital is not always the best way to get experience and to get hands-on experience specifically. You may have noticed, if you have tried to volunteer at a hospital recently, number one, a lot of them aren't letting people in due to COVID still. But number two, you're not going to be able to have interactions with patients, right? You're not going to be in there treating the patients. You're not going to be giving them their medication. You're not going to be taking their blood pressure. So you're not really getting a hands-on experience. I found that a lot of times students who volunteer at hospitals, they're working at the gift shop, or they're sitting at the front desk answering questions and giving directions. And I'm not saying that that's not valuable and that that's not helpful, but it's not really giving you an immersive experience or an immersive look into the medical field. So where else can you look to volunteer? Look at the Red Cross and volunteering at blood drives. Look at homeless shelters. Look at medical clinics, especially medical clinics abroad. If you have an opportunity, perhaps you have family members overseas. Look at hospice centers. Look at retirement homes. Look at organizations that work with people with special needs, right? These are all going to be medically adjacent activities that are going to give you more hands-on experience with high-risk populations within the medical community. So you may find that you're getting a lot more out of your volunteering by looking beyond a hospital. Another great thing to do is to get a certification, right? And you can do these virtually, you can do them in person, but looking to get your CPR AED certification, first aid certification. Depending on which state you live in, you may also be eligible to start doing EMT training. Or I've also had students get their CNA certificate, which is a certified nursing assistant. Again, any credentials that you can get that may open up opportunities for you to have more hands-on experience with patients are going to be a valuable part of the admissions process and of your profile. And then of course, physician shadowing is great. It's great to be able to demonstrate to a university that you have an understanding of what it means to be a doctor, of the fact that it is hard work, it can be long hours, it can be stressful. You're not necessarily going to save every single patient who you work with. So being able to get some shadowing experience is great. Again, I understand that it can be really tough right now. You may be able to actually find virtual shadowing opportunities where you could watch surgeries. That's one way to do it. You can also, of course, talk to your family physician. And even if it's not shadowing, just sitting down and having an informational interview. Again, you want to just show a university that you know what the day-to-day life is of a physician. Again, that you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, so to speak, when you're applying to a pre-med program. That's what you get from the shadowing. So just some final words of advice for today. Number one, make sure that you're really thoughtful about what type of program is going to be the right fit for you. Again, a BSMD program is probably not the best fit for most of you who are listening today. So you may want to just look at the traditional path. You may be interested in thinking about an early assurance program later on, but really be thoughtful about what's going to be the best fit for you and your interests, and keeping in mind the fact that you may change your mind when you get to a university. Certainly be sure to challenge yourself in STEM subjects in high school, right? Really pushing those math and science classes to the highest level possible. Also consider some opportunities to take coursework outside of high school, right? Looking to get those anatomy and physiology class or a sociology class, or even a medical ethics course, right, at a community college or online through Coursera or edX. Going beyond your high school is, again, going to help you differentiate yourself from other students. Maintain a well-rounded extracurricular profile, right? You certainly want to make sure that you are doing all of those extracurriculars that are going to give you exposure to the medical field and to show your interest to admissions officers, but make sure that if there are other things that you are passionate about, that you're not losing those at the expense of trying to gain more and more and more experiences related to medicine. Study hard and excel in science and math standardized testing, right? Again, still prepare for the SAT and or ACT, AP exams, IB exams, right? You want to be able to show as much strength in the STEM subjects as possible through your profile. And then finally, just remember that there are many paths to medical school. I have known students who have not decided they wanted to become doctors until their junior year of college, and they've still been able to make it work. I've also seen a lot of students who decide that maybe becoming a physician is not for them, but they want to go into nursing, or they want to go into public health, or they want to become a physician assistant, right? So there are so many careers that are related to healthcare that aren't just specifically doctors and physicians. So just remember that there are so many paths that are available to you, and to keep an open mind as you are considering what may be the best fit for you and for your interests. So thank you so much for listening to the presentation today. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us. You can email us info@acceptu.com, call or text us, connect with us on social media. And if you're interested in learning more about AcceptU and what we do and potentially working with us for the rest of your time in high school, you can go right to the link that's on there and sign up for an introductory call so that we can tell you a little bit more about our programs. Again, thank you for listening to the information, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.